Time of the week again, heat check time. It is time to check some heat. Joel Peterson and Michael Houben with you as always. Plenty happening again this week, Mick. We've got NBA playoffs underway. We've got players in the college transfer portal. We've got Boomers and Opals squads to get to. There is a lot happening in the basketball world.
Yeah, things happening all over the place. Some names entering the draft as well. Lots happening.
Yeah, absolutely. So there's heaps to cover. Let's start with Dyson Daniels. Where's he from, Mick?
He's from Bendigo.
He's from Bendigo. Thank you very much. Need to get it in there straight away. And he has been nominated for a couple of big awards. So Defensive Player of the Year in some elite company here, and then Most Improved Player as well. So Evan Mobley, Draymond Green, he's up against for Defensive Player of the Year. As you can see, Kate Cunningham and Ivica Zubac, he's up against for Most Improved. What a season he's had. To be in this kind of company is really special.
Yeah, all done now. A great time to reflect on the season that he's had. What a fantastic development on both sides of the floor. He's gone from a good defender to one of the best in the world. He's gone from a single-digit scorer to nearly a 15-point-a-game scorer. The efficiency's gone up as well. It's been a true jump, not just in opportunity, but also in ability as well.
It was an interesting question, when the trade from the New Orleans Pelicans happened, exactly how he'd fit, how that would shake out. Fair to say the Hawks have won that trade.
Yeah, they've done so well, and he has transformed their defense. They went from the 27th defense all the way to the 18th, so it's been a big difference. Individually, he's been having a massive defensive season. He's had 98 more steals than second best, the most steals in a season since Gary Payton. And not only does he do that, but he does it without gambling, without fouling. It's true impact defense in isolation. He takes the best defender every single game, and when he has those players in isolation situations, they only score 37% from the field. So he is a true lockdown defender.
So anytime you're in conversations with the glove, that's pretty good company to be keeping. He's earned himself the nickname the Great Barrier Thief as well. We've been riding the campaign all the way through. We're certainly not alone, but we'd like to think we've been at the forefront of that. So when we get down to the crunch of things here with two awards, which one, Defensive Player of the Year or Most Improved Player, which one do you think he is more likely to win?
Well, I think he's well deserving of both, but it feels like he has some real competition in that defensive candidate situation there. I think Evan Mobley is going to get a lot of love. The Cavs obviously had a fantastic season. I think there's an argument for both there. But if not, what an absolute stitch-up if he does not win Most Improved. I think if you look about the actual improvement throughout the three candidates, Cunningham's the big name there, but in terms of the guy that's improved the most, I think Dyson is hands down that guy.
Yeah, Ivica Zubac has had a great season, but he was pretty good last year, and Kate Cunningham, you're the #1 overall pick a few years ago. You're meant to be pretty good. Our man should be right in the thick of that. So the son of Ricky and Brakita, he's doing some good things, and we look forward to seeing how he goes. Some massive news landed in the NBL this week, and really, it's hard to overstate how seismic this could be for the competition. Kendric Davis, the MVP runner-up from last season, going from the Adelaide 36ers to sign with the Sydney Kings alongside Xavier Cooks, alongside Matthew Dellavedova. This is a huge move.
It was a bit touch and go for a minute there. I didn't know whether he was going to be back in the NBL. We heard he wasn't going to come back to Adelaide. I didn't have Kings on the radar. I think this is fantastic. I'm very excited. And a couple of interesting things to note. One is that he's buying into the culture of the Sydney Kings alongside Daly, Bogut, all of those guys. But also the dynamic between Kendric and Daly, having those 2 point guards together. I think, if that works and if he can adapt successfully, that's a big win for Kendric and the Kings as well.
So how does he fit alongside Dellavedova? Because certainly with Adelaide, there was some frustration at times about how that offense would run through Kendric Davis, and he'd sort of take the air out of the ball, and it could get pretty stagnant at times. Do you think playing alongside a lead guard like Daly at that point guard spot will sort of help speed things up and get him some more open looks?
Yeah, on one hand, the potential is there. I think Kendric is someone that historically likes and enjoys having the ball and dribbling the air out of the ball sometimes, but he's a fantastic on-ball scorer. He's going to have to adapt successfully. They use the example of Kyrie and Daly, that sort of combination. There are some parallels there for sure, but it's going to take Kendric being able to successfully figure out how to play off the ball and make those cuts and those reads to be an effective off-ball scorer.
We're still a while away from the NBL season coming up, but if that's going to be such a thing to watch. The Kings were a fascinating watch last season. They're going to be again this season. Plenty of NBL talent in the Boomers squad that's been named this week. Of course, the Trans-Tasman challenge to come up against New Zealand. So the Boomers and the Opals have both named squads. A couple of names that jump out here. So Xavier Cooks, first game back since his recent suspension. A couple of younger guys as well. So your Jacob Furphys, Elijah Pepper, who's been on a heater and we'll touch on very shortly. Aussie Rap is in this squad too. Harry Wessels. Who jumps out when you look at this squad?
Well, what I enjoy about these games, they're always a little funky, but there's a mix between the established talent and the emerging talent. Obviously, we've got a couple of vets like Toddy, but the young guys, Aussie Rap, he's going to Wisconsin. We've got Jacob Furphy going to UConn, Harry Wessels from St. Mary's. I love seeing what those young guys can do in amongst the pros.
Yeah, it's so exciting. On the Opals side of things, there's a couple of really terrific stories here as well. None bigger than Sarah Blitzarves at the top of that list. Of course, coming off the back surgery, 12 months out of the game, back with the Melbourne Tigers in the NBL 1 and back in Opals colours. So much experience to add there. And a lot of players who are doing really good things at NBL 1 level as well. You think of Izzy Borlays with the Melbourne Tigers, Alex Fowler out west with Perry Lakes in the NBL 1 West. There's a nice balance of sort of up-and-comers, that young, early 20s, and those sort of up-and-coming talents here, and then some real experience that's been around this program for a while.
Yeah, I think that's the key here, is sort of blooding the young talent into the green and gold culture. So having those veterans like Blitzarves is so important. But yeah, for those young players like Nyado Poach, that's so important for them, and what a big milestone.
Yeah, we know that it's such a proving ground. So the Opals and Boopers in action coming up against New Zealand, which is going to be very exciting a little bit later on in the next couple of weeks. We saw Elijah Pepper in that squad for the Boomers. Now, I don't know. We need to go to a new level in terms of this. This could be like as far as heat check goes, we could call this the Scoville scale. We could see weekly just how hot the Pepper is at any given time. 50 in his first game, 51 in his second game, his third game of the season. Just a lazy 48 for this man, Mick. This is some kind of run that he's putting on out west with Warwick.
I said last week he's not going to average 50 for the season, and he nearly proved me wrong, at least for one more week. Just a lazy 48 points. And with every passing game, it makes me more excited. What are we going to see from him in the red next season?
Yeah, it's such an exciting prospect because his minutes fluctuated at different times with that Perth Wildcats team, but he hit some big shots at big times. So the win against Joondalup at the weekend, the numbers from that, 16 of 30 from the field, 10 of 21 from the three-point line, so 10 three-pointers that he made. He is now shooting 58% from the field for the season and 49% from downtown. That is just crazy, but we know that this guy has ability.
I'm not going to say that those numbers are completely sustainable, whether it's the volume or the efficiency, but they're not too far off. This is a guy that shoots it from deep at such a remarkable rate. And again, we talk about that translation to the NBL. Everyone had to fit around Bryce last season. Now we get to see Elijah sort of play this role a bit more and get some of those shots and featured in the offense. I can't wait to see if he can sustain this at the next level as well.
Yeah, with his college experience, he came in pretty ready-made, and he's showing that in the NBL 1 West at the moment. Also out west, Anneli Maley's been playing for the Perth Redbacks. They had a really good game against Perry Lakes, so star-studded this game at the weekend. You had Maley and Chew on one team, you had Whitcomb and Fowler on the other, and Anneli Maley put up another eye-popping stat line, 37-23. She had 3 assists, 6 steals and 2 blocks, 10 offensive boards in this as well before she goes over to LA with the Sparks. This is a very nice way to earn her tenure.
We're going to be repeating some names over and over, I think, on this program if these guys keep backing up their performances. She's a stat sheet stuffer, gave Perry Lakes the business, and she's 11 rebounds a game clear of second best in the West over there.
It's absolutely astonishing numbers from Anneli Maley. We know what she can do. We're looking forward to seeing her both at NBL 1 level and at WNBA level as well. Over in the States, the NBA playoffs, of course, we touched on the play-in last week. We had a couple of our Aussies fall by the wayside, Dyson Daniels, Josh Giddey, but we do still have some names in action in the playoffs in a couple of the more intriguing series as well. So Jock Landale's Houston Rockets are taking on the Golden State Warriors at the moment. That's got... game 1 was a fascinating defensive grind between these two teams. This is going to be something really interesting to watch to see what role he plays against the Warriors.
Yeah, there's still a wide representation of Aussies on a lot of these teams. We didn't see much of Jock or much of any of the Aussies so far, but we know he's a guy that when his name's called upon, whether he's been playing lots of minutes recently or not, he's a guy that can step up and make a real impact on both sides of the ball.
Brings that energy, and to a team where, rebounding is a big strength. They go against a good rebounding team in the Warriors as well. There could be a role for him at some point for Emma Udoka.
Yeah, absolutely. I think Jock is somebody who absolutely deserves minutes. He is just a victim of Houston's depth right now, but we know someone that can stretch the floor, someone that will do all the dirty work inside. There's going to be a role for him to play at some point in this series.
Cheerio to Jack McVeigh, who's also spent some time, and of course he's on that Houston Rockets roster and within that system. The Los Angeles Clippers are taking on the Denver Nuggets in another really fascinating series in the first round of the NBA playoffs. Patty Mills is there with the Clippers this season, having bounced around for a couple of different teams over the last couple of years. We know what he can provide. We've seen it in Boomer's colours. We've seen it in his tenure in the NBA. He can be some kind of spark plug.
Big shot maker in big games. He is an absolute spark plug. As you said, he might be warming the bench for a few games, but you need a little boost, a little bit of injection of shooting. He's a guy that's going to come off and he's not going to die wondering. He's going to get those shots up and we'll see what he can do.
And of course, Ben Simmons playing some minutes for the Clippers as well. So good luck to all our Aussies in action over the next little while. Some guys that have got their eyes on the NBA maybe as early as next season are heading toward the NBA draft. Tyrese Proctor is one of them, Mick. He has officially nominated to put his hat in the ring.
Yeah, he's 100% in. I think this is the exact right move for Tyrese. He had a quieter sophomore season, bounced back immensely this year, went really deep into March with Duke, and I think his stock currently stands in the second round, and we saw him, not just his ability, but also his ability to play an NBA role alongside all the other Duke talent. I think we know what we get out of Tyrese, and I think he's very likely to get drafted in some capacity.
So what is it that teams are looking for when they watch his game?
Yeah, just this ancillary guard, someone that can play alongside, your main guys, your Lukas, your LeBrons of the world, someone that can play off the ball, shoot the three at a really high level. But when he needs to do some pick and roll, when he needs to create his shot and play D as well on the other end, he can do all those things. He's very versatile.
So what you're saying is you wouldn't mind seeing him on the Lakers?
I wouldn't mind it. I think it would be a good fit.
That would be fun. Alex Condon's a really interesting one in the sense that he's also nominated for the draft, but left his options open, so the possibility that he can still go back to college. What do you make of this decision?
Testing the waters, as they call it. He's got until June 15th to withdraw his name. So he's going to spend the next couple of months doing some interviews with NBA teams, doing some workouts, receiving some feedback on where his stock's at, where his game's at, and he'll make a decision from there. So he could either stay in the draft, he's currently mocked at 29, or he could go back and have another year at Florida if he wanted.
What do you think he'd be weighing up? Like, where would it be the promise of a pick from a team? Like, what factors do you think would be at play here for him?
Yeah, I think the promise of a first-round pick would be massive. I think that would lock him into this year's draft for sure. And in terms of going back, he has to weigh up, will going back to Florida see another boost in my game? Will I see more usage? I think when we look at the season he had, I don't think it gets better than the year that they had. He had a massive season. His name's on everyone's lips. They obviously won a lot of basketball games. I think the iron is hot right now and he should take the plunge.
All right, so if you put your agent's hat on, if you're advising Alex Condon, what would you be telling him to do?
He's got to lock this in. Now, obviously, we'll get the feedback. We'll see exactly where he's at. But I don't think his stock gets bigger than this. I think this is the year for him.
So strike while the iron's hot if you're Alex Condon.
That's it.
That is going to be something to watch over the next little while to see exactly what the West Aussie big man does. Speaking of people who've been out in Western Australia, Ifan Almansa, the Spanish next star, who's one of the most well-credentialed junior basketball prospects to come into the NBA sort of system in a long time. Of course, he spent the last season with the Wildcats. He has also now thrown his hat into the ring. Do you think we'll see him sort of in that draft calculation?
Be curious to see. We saw him sort of fall out of that Perth rotation when finals eventually came. So, we saw glimpses early in the season, but I think if he does get drafted, it's more based on his pedigree. As you said, a very dominant player in the Under-17 World Cup, in the Under-19 World Cup. Is he someone that has proven himself recently? Maybe not so much, but there's still stuff to like with this, and I think there's a chance.
And if he goes back and plays in Europe over many years, he could be something really, really interesting. And some news just in as well. Malik Lewis, the Southeast Melbourne next star, of course, from Trinidad and Tobago in the Caribbean. He has nominated for the NBA draft too.
Yeah, very recent news. I think Malik's someone who's right on the fringes there. Hard to tell whether he will get drafted or not, but he's someone who is a pretty finished product in terms of what he brings to the table. He was a great contributor for Southeast. I thought he was really versatile on the defensive end of the floor, shot the three really well at times as well. And again, that archetype of a player that NBA teams really like.
So there's a couple of names to watch as far as NBL prospects going into the NBA draft. We love to go to Puerto Rico at this time of year, Mick, especially. We're both in the jumpers. The weather's just cooling down a little bit in our part of the world, so we like to go and bathe in the sunshine that is the the emerging basketball hotspot that is Puerto Rico, and there's been some more players with Australian connections and NBL connections doing some good things. The big Kiwi, Sam Menenga, is one of them. He's been having a really good run of form coming off what was a pretty solid NBL campaign with the Breakers.
Yeah, 16-7, so the basic counting stats look really good, but there's one number that's really sticking out to me. He's shooting 47% from the three-point line. That is in stark contrast to his season with the Breakers. He had a bit of a dip. He was down at 29%. And Sam's a guy, I look at this New Zealand roster, I think he's primed for a big year. They don't just want him to have a big year. He needs to have a big year for them. And, we see the glimpses. He has big games. He looks dominant at times in the NBL. If he can transfer over this form, it might be a bit more consistent. Yeah,
that confidence and maybe moving into that bigger role for him will be really important. He had 24-9 recently against Bryce Cotton's Guaynabo. Of course, Derek Williams, the former number 2 overall draft pick, also on that team, coached by JJ Barea, is Bryce Cotton. We'll come back to him in a moment as well. Brisbane Bullets big man Tyrell Harrison had a great start to last season. Of course, he was the MVP at the NBL Blitz. He had, again, a couple of injury worries throughout the course of the season. He's playing with Milton Doyle and Sam Wardenberg at the moment, and he's really hit some nice form too.
We've been raving about this Mayaguez trio over in Puerto Rico, but one guy has established himself as the alpha on this team, and it's Tyrell. He is having a fantastic season, nearly 19 points a game, nearly 10 rebounds a game. And, the more I think about it, the more unsurprising it is. He has had some injury issues early in his career, but since he's been healthy, he's taken a big leap forward every year with Brisbane. Maybe this is a prelude to him establishing himself as one of the elite bigs in the NBL next season.
I mean, the Brisbane Bullets would certainly hope so, and we know that it's all there for him. He's a ferocious rebounder, and he certainly plays with some physicality. And if he established himself as the alpha, I'm personally not going to be arguing with him, Mick.
Well, it's some elite company. Milton Doyle is a fantastic import in our league. Sam Wardenberg is one of the great locals. So the fact that he's emerging amongst that company is pretty fantastic.
We love a backcourt showdown. We got one recently with Chris Golding and Ian Clark coming up against Bryce Cotton. Not too far removed from their NBL playoff series, of course, which was absolutely fascinating between Melbourne United and the Perth Wildcats. They went head-to-head recently with Golding and Clark coming up against Bryce Cotton as well. So it's nice to see when we get these matchups of NBL stars.
Yeah, it's nice to see them back on the court together already. The United duo got the best of them. 7 threes between CG and Ian. Pretty standard stuff as per usual from them behind the arc. Bryce had 19, Ian had 24. I kind of want to touch on Bryce for a second here because we know he's head and shoulders above everyone in the NBL, but he hasn't quite emerged as this superstar player in Puerto Rico just yet. It seems like he's sort of finding his place in the team. He's not necessarily being gifted the ball every possession. So a very interesting, different dynamic there for him.
Yeah, it's a bit of an adjustment for Bryce Cotton, but of course he does have a couple of big people in that team over there as well. So we'll see how the rest of his season goes, because I think everyone is keeping a very close eye on his fortunes and exactly where he may end up over the next little while. Another showdown of NBL talent happened. Well, another island nation, that's about all Puerto Rico and New Zealand have in common from what I can tell. Happened over in the land of the long white cloud. One of the best games of the NZNBL season so far petered Owen Foxwell against Will Hickey among a number of talented players. 111 to 110, Taranaki beat Auckland, and the two NBL talents absolutely went off in this one.
We've documented Davo Hickey's absolute tear in New Zealand for a few weeks now, and he just added a casual 36, 10 and 9 this week. Pretty standard stuff for Davo at this point. But Owen Foxwell, almost matching him, 31, 8 and 7. Obviously, they got the win as well, so credit to Owen. It's fantastic to see him playing at this level, and another guy that has taken a leap every single year. I'm looking at Southeast Melbourne. He was a DP, then he went to a tenacious defensive guard. I think last season he turned into a two-way threat. Looking at this sort of form, I wouldn't mind seeing him. I think there's a world where he could almost start at point guard for Southeast next season.
So what is next for him? So there's the prospect of an expanded role with Southeast Melbourne. There's been some whispers that there might be opportunities abroad for him too. What do you think the future holds for Owen Foxwell?
Well, I've seen the noise. There's a bit of talk about Owen potentially being open to college opportunities, which it feels like it's fair game for anyone under 21 at this point. He is under contract with Southeast. I think it's very unlikely. And you look at Southeast's roster, I think Owen is in a great spot. He's been developing, and I think there's a bigger role again for him next season.
And we know that the NZNBL is a great proving ground for those players who are looking for a bigger role in the NBL to go and play their way into that. Nolan Foxwell might be one of those. Another is Nick Marshall, who's newly signed with the Tasmania Jack Jumpers. Of course, has spent the last few seasons in Adelaide, the South Australian natives, putting up some really big numbers. 28 and 12 in his most recent game, 11 of 17. He's shooting 38% from the field for Wellington as well. He's making a really nice introduction to the NZNBL.
Yeah, he's almost the quintessential second-tier star, whether it's NBL 1, whether it's the New Zealand League. This is a guy that always looks fantastic at these sort of levels. He's averaging just under 20 points a game, shooting the three at a really good clip. And just having a look at some of the stuff he's doing here, that's exactly what Tassie need. I think this is finally the fit for him. They need an injection of offense from outside, above the rim, slashing. All of those factors are going to be key. And I think, this is the year. You think of Jack McVeigh, talent cast aside, Majuk Deng, I think he's the next one in that sort of Tassie pipeline.
Yeah, he fell out of the rotation the back end of the season for Adelaide, so the opportunity will definitely be there for him in Tasmania. Kyle Bowen's plying his trade with Canterbury, who are one of the dominant teams in recent years in the NZNBL, and just as he does at NBL level, and he has done at NBL 1 level in the past, he's just proven to be a rebounding machine.
Yeah, I'm a Chicago Bulls fan. There's a commentator, Stacey King, and he has this catchphrase for Taj Gibson. I'm going back a few years.
Yep.
Hard hat lunch pail. That is what I think of when I watch Kyle Bowen play basketball. It's not pretty, but he does all the dirty work. He goes to work every single game. He's averaging about 14 and 9, crashing the glass at a high rate, playing defense at a high rate. The offense is ticking along as well. It's not, as I said, it's not pretty, particularly that shot put jumper. He's only hit 2 threes so far this season, but at nearly 15 points a game, he's getting the job done.
So hard hat lunch pail.
That's the one.
Hard hat lunch pail. Interesting combination. Your headwear and your lunch, but Kyle Bowen's making it work. And he's playing with some big names there too. So he's got Max Darling, he's got Sean McDonald, he's got Toe Smith-Milner, he's got Taylor Britt, and he's got Tamatoa Isaac. So they are a loaded team.
Yeah, the Breakers are just fixated on this roster, right? So much New Zealand talent. And again, Taylor Britt, someone to keep an eye on. We haven't really seen too much of him. Max Darling has had a bit of an emergence over the past year or so. A team with a lot of talent, with a lot of NBL names attached to it.
Let's finish with some college news. We'll go back to the Foxwell family. We talked about Owen and maybe his prospects in this world, but Joel Foxwell, who of course spent the last season as a DP with Melbourne United, he's going to the Portland Pilots, who have a rich history of producing Australians into professional careers. Yeah,
there's been so many players come through Portland. A lot actually leave this off-season as well. So Joel's helping stock up the stocks there, along with Riley Parker, another Australian as well. Now, Joel's a fantastic player. We've seen glimpses of him compete for Melbourne, but college was always his destiny.
Yep, and of course, they had Boldingdit, they had Max McKinnon, they had Aussie Rap. They've still got a couple of those and had Tyler Robertson in recent seasons, so it has been a really good proving ground for Aussies. So that is going to be interesting to see how Joel Foxwell goes there. Max McKinnon is one of those names so he was at Portland. He's found a new home at LSU. This is going to be a really interesting fit to see what he can do in maybe a bigger role for a bigger program.
Yeah, moving to SEC, he's going to play under David Patrick, the Boomers assistant, so there's a great connection there. And this is a very similar trajectory to think of, some of the shooters that we've seen come through. They move up to the higher level, like Rain Smith going to Louisville. Once you're able to prove yourself at a higher college level, it's more athletic, it's harder to just dominate based on your tools. That is going to, it's a risk or reward. There's a risk in you might get exposed at a higher level, but, conversely, if you do well at that level, suddenly your stock, not only in terms of college, but also professionally, is going to go up immensely.
And then one name that you flagged that I must admit I'm not hugely familiar with, and this is why I love leaning on your expertise, is Will Johnston. So he's left Loyola Marymount, which is a mouthful, easy for you to say, to join Richmond. Tell me about Will Johnston.
Yeah, he's someone that took the junior college pathway, and as a result of some of these recent rules, he gets an extra year of eligibility. So he spent a couple of years at LMU, as you said. I'm going to say LMU, it's a bit easier.
Yeah, that's much easier. That's good from you.
Spent a season with Kelly Leopepe there as well. Fantastic program, did really well, scored in the double digits. He's someone that can shoot at a really high level, not just off the catch, but he can pull up off the dribble at a really high level. You can see his ability to attack and make jumpers. Again, moving up to Richmond, he's testing himself at a harder level. He's probably going to be more of an off-ball player, more spot-ups. But, if he can excel in that role, NBL teams will be coveting him next
Where's
season.
He going to?
He's going to Richmond.
Rich what?
Richmond.
Love it. Thank you. That's going to be really exciting to see how Will Johnston goes. And every time we bring him up on Heat Check, I'm going to consistently go back to not saying Loyola Marymount. I'm going to go with LMU, and then we're going to throw Richmond in there as well. So that's going to be fun to see what Will Johnston does, as well as all of those names and how Dyson Daniels fares in awards season. That is going to be a big watch. Basketball.com.au for all the latest. You can read mixed stuff there, see all that's happening with our Aussies in the world of hoops. Great to get your insights as always, Mick, and look forward to seeing you next week.
Thanks, mate. I'm looking forward to some of these playoffs.
Yeah, absolutely. See how our Aussies go. Thanks for your company as well here on Heat Check. We'll be back with you next week.